Hi folks, in this video I'd like to show you how I actually go about making one of my designs of handbag basically. Now you've seen the other ones. I've made a larger oval and a smaller oval, and this time I'm going to make one from the same pattern as the oval, but this time I'm going to have a more flat bottom on it. So what I've done, I've selected two pieces of English Walnut and drawn around the pattern, cut them out on the bandsaw, rounded all the edges over, sanded the edges over, and give them a coat of linseed oil, boiled linseed oil. So that's the result so far. It's got some quite nice grain in it, that one. It's got what you call flame and grain crisscrossing each other. So that's the signature piece, and then this one's slightly darker, and it's got like a tiger stripe pattern across it, so slightly different on either side of the bag. So that's those prepared, so we'll put those to one side for now. Now make sure I've got no linseed on my hands while I'm doing the next stage, which is the actual main body of the bag itself, which is here. It consists of a basic straight strip to the desired width, and the front end, which would be where it closes, has got rounded corners. Now there's lots of prep involved in leather work, and to keep it simple, basically you cut it out accurately. So it must be parallel because it's going to roll over it on itself. And I've used an Osborne number 2 skiver for the edge, and taken the very edge of the sharp edge of the leather off. And then what I've done, I've actually darkened the sides for a little bit of contrast. And then what I've used is it's Cortisol edging ink, which you use for making shoes, for doing the sole leather, which this is the same stuff basically. So I've let that dry for a good hour or so now, and the next stage is to burnish that. So we'll get set up and I'll be back with you in 2 ticks. To do my burnishing, what I've done, I've used my lathe on its highest speed, and I've made this simple piece of wood with a groove to the designed width of the leather, which is 4mm, and the sides are slightly tapered outwards so it doesn't touch the sides when you're burnishing. So we'll put the camera in there and then burnish the edge. It's always best to have 2 hands free when you're doing this, so you can keep a really good hold of the leather, and that fast speed and heat that builds up will burnish the edge. You tilt it more this way so that it doesn't actually come over the very edge. As you can see there, perfectly burnished edge. We'll give a couple more goes on that one, and we'll go right round, and then we'll get back to you in 2 ticks again. So there we have the edge burnished all the way around. You'll see they have a nice curved or crowned edge and a shiny line all the way through. So that's the leather prepared. The strap is done exactly in the same way. In this case it'll be about 30mm wide, the same as the other ones. So I'll go and get you one of the second ones that I made, and I'll show you that. Here we have Mark II, which I made last week, and you can see at the side is a slightly smaller oval than the first one, It's not as bulky. So that's Mark 2 and that'll be Mark 3. It's got a slightly different shape. It's got a more flat bottom to it. So you can see the edge on there is burnished, just like the one I've shown you. And then on the back you have two slots in the leather. And when you cut those slots, you punch a hole either end to stop the leather splitting any further. And then remove in that groove the thickness of the leather so as it doesn't push the back out too far. And 2 stainless steel 5mm Allen key bolts that hold it together. Strap comes down to about there inside, and I'll show you that again shortly on this model. Same clasp as before, about £3–4 off eBay. This time I've gone round the edge with a fire writer made by Antar, which I'll show you later, and put some little lines and dots just to break up this sharp edge and give it a bit of contrast to match the sides. Quite sturdy things. Because it's 4mm thick leather, they don't collapse in on themselves, and completely waterproof shape along the top there. Well, saying completely waterproof, it will get in eventually, but good thing about leather is you can treat it with oil and polish it and make it waterproof. And as it scuffs with use, it'll become even more antique look. So I'll move on to the next stage, which will be fastening the main body onto the boards. So back in a tick. Next stage is to do a trial run of the actual pattern round the actual end board. So what I've done here, I've chosen a level. That would be the front edge that opens when you see the bag open. And once you've worked out roughly where that needs to be, you need to put just a small pencil mark on the timber there, and then match that over with the other ones, and then trial it again, and you'll see that it overlaps. It's just in the right place. So, and then the other thing to work out is where the last stud goes in. You know, the little screws that you've seen on the other one, where the last stud goes in, at that level there is where these strap holes are actually cut into the leather itself. So when the strap's on, it'll hold level with the side of the body. As you can see there, it comes up almost straight. So when you open up the lid, it doesn't impede the opening. And you can see there, I've got the strap holes already marked. So once you've done that, and you're happy with it, place the 2 boards back to back, and accurately, with the aid of a little square, we'll do that now, with a square across, and that'll be where the 2 edges of the bag will be glued and screwed to the boards themselves. So that's going to be the front open edge. So I'm going to put left and a right, so you can start off and you don't get things wrong. So once you get to that stage, next stage is to get the leather that you prepared earlier, open up the pattern, and then with the aid of a pair of engineer's dividers, the first screw wants to be almost level, so when the screw's screwed in, it's almost to the top to this top edge. I don't know if you can see that there. So I've marked it out on the paper already where the holes need to be on the side here. So that'll be where your first and your last holes are. And once you've marked those out, prick through onto the leather all the way up. The next thing then to do is to attach it to the wood. So we'll pause the video for a second and I'll be back shortly. Now, to work out exactly where the holes need to be, the best way to do it, I've found, is place a straight edge against the leather there, put the wad up to the leather, and make a tiny little mark on the other side. So just as a reference, only just a tiny mark so you can only just see it, and that is the thickness of your timber there. Once you've worked that out, then you can go along with your first, let's do this while I'm here, with the first one fairly close to the top, which is about there, and then I just guess it, I don't have a guideline, I can do it by eye, and just go all the way along, and that tells you how many screws you'll need, all the way along the leather. And this time we're not going to put a pattern on the leather, I'm going to just leave it plain, and work your way up the bag until you get to the last one. And I'll just double check, and the last one wants to be where the hinge is, as I showed you, the actual, not the hinge, where the strap slots need to be. So I'll put a tiny little mark there. That'll rub out later with the oil when you oil it. So we'll carry on along, and we'll go to the nearest hole, or whichever's nearest to where the straps are, so we can keep this spacing equal. So the last one's about a 1/4 inch off or so, as you can see here. I'll leave that as my last one, but that's where my strap will be. It can be in between those two, it doesn't really matter. So we'll go and do that, and I'll be back shortly. So that's all the positions marked, and I will now attempt to cut the straps for the slots for the straps, you'd say. To do the actual strap slots, what I do, I measure from where I left off on the last hole, which is here, and then just make sure that they both correspond and they're the same size. So that's 10 3/4 and 10 3/4. Yeah, that's correct, because if you get these out of level when you actually when you come to put the leather round the boards, if they don't match, the handbag will be skew whiffed. So it's really important that you get those measurements absolutely correct. So we'll go ahead and put the marks on for the slot for the straps. So that's 10 3/4. Let's put a tiny pencil mark, 10 3/4 there, even though it's not lined up with the perfectly with the way you're going to put the screws through, get the strap level. So we'll join those two together with a pencil line. Or the best way to do it is to put dots in. In this case, to get the spacing from the first hole to the next hole, what I do is I use a vernier gauge and the mark off on the paper to the edge, and then at that 10.5 inch, or sorry, 10 3/4 spot, I'll put a mark in with the vernier gauge from that side, and another mark on that side, and that'll be the beginning of the slot. And the slot is the width of the strap is the same measurement again, so you come across and you put a second dot from your first dot to your second dot. So that's where your strap will be. Again, line everything up so you know that they're perfectly in line. before you make your final hole with the brad hole. So use this straight edge and pick the first point and put a positive hole. Same with the second one and the subsequent ones. So there and there. So next job is to punch in the holes in the leather. It really is tough stuff, this. Punch the holes through. I can't reach right across with them, I'll just do the other ones separately. So that's the first one's cut in. I'll go and do the second ones and I'll get back to you in a tick. Here we can see the straps punched, and one of them has actually removed the thickness of the leather in between the two holes to take the strap. You get furry edges like you see here on the other side. What I do, I just use a little gas torch like this and burn the little furs off. It just tidies the edges up. So we'll pause the video over here and it'll continue in part 2. So thank you all again for watching for now. Back shortly.